Well, in his remarks today, President Joe Biden said the U.S. does not want its relationship with China to tip into conflict, using a more diplomatic tone when it comes to the rivalry between the countries. All right, let's bring in our guest, Stephen Yates. He is a senior fellow and AFPI China Policy Initiative Chair. Steve, great to be with you today. As mentioned, President Biden mentioned China in his speech today at the United Nations. Meantime, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, well, he recently met with China's Foreign Minister Wang in Malta. Now, both sides said the days-long talks were candid and constructive. Steve, what more do we know about those talks, and how important is it to keep these lines of communication open?
Well, keeping the lines of communication open is only as important as what messages are actually being conveyed and what action is being taken upon those discussions. There's been kind of a pattern of the Biden administration sending cabinet-level officials to China to ask for a thaw in relations, a resumption of normal commercial ties, and trying to get China to back away from support for Moscow in its invasion of Ukraine and the threats towards Taiwan. So a lot on the plate, tons of justification to meet. Unfortunately, though, we look like the ardent suitor because the United States keeps seeking these meetings, and China's behavior isn't really measurably changing, and they're not really coming to the United States to ask for improved relations either.
Well, Steve, when do you think President Biden and President Xi will meet, if at all?
Well, the first opportunity, I think, is going to end up being the APEC summit that is hosted in San Francisco. Unfortunately, given kind of the status of crime and whatever else going on in San Francisco, not exactly America's best foot forward to the world for a host city, but it's where leaders have tended to meet on the margins. Oddly, Xi Jinping, China's leader, has skipped a couple of opportunities like the recent G20. And so it remains to be determined. Does he come? Does he send someone else in his place? I'm certain that that was among the things that National Security Advisor Sullivan was talking to his Chinese counterpart about.
And what would you like to see the Biden administration do in this instance? I mean, how do you think they should be handling China?
Well, first and foremost, I think it's fine to signal an openness for talks, but I don't think you want to make us look desperate as a country by repeatedly knocking on a door where it's unrequited love. And so I think that the Biden administration needs to say, here are the priority issues that we want progress on, and let's see some movement before we have another meeting or take another move on policy. I think pushing them to pull back on the threats against Taiwan is pretty important given the number of military exercises that have been taking place in that theater, something that Americans are aware of, but I think they don't have a sense of how much more important that is than what they're witnessing in Ukraine, even though that matters too.
Yeah, speaking of China's military, I want to talk about this now. China's defense minister has not been seen in public for more than about 2 weeks now. And late last week, the country's foreign minister did not directly answer questions about his whereabouts. What does this signal?
Well, it's an oddity of the communist system where officials will just get, quote unquote, disappeared. This happened with the recent past foreign minister. It came to light that he'd had an affair that was ongoing through his entire time in D.C. when he was ambassador and continued when he was foreign minister. There's no indication of what exactly the problem was with the minister of defense, but the leader of the Communist Party, Xi Jinping, has had a number of these things, not just these two officials. So it's an embarrassment to him having proteges get disappeared because of being under a cloud of suspicion. It's also conspicuous given the national security tensions. But I would emphasize that it's the party that's in charge of China's military. And so these changes don't actually change what their military operations would be.
Steve, we're going to leave it right there. Thank you so much. Always great to be with you and get your insights. Appreciate it.